Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grev and welcome once again to another episode of the Rip Roaring Reds. You're joining us on Sunday, 24 hours removed from Arsenal's victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Arsenal winning 2-0. I'm joined by Jace. How are you doing on this fine Sunday, Jace?
It's a lovely day, top of the league, can't complain. Been out for lunch, feeling good. Yeah, just happy we got the result yesterday, really. There are elements where you worry about the creativity. So I'm just happy to see they've got the points on the board. Liverpool got to do it today. Pressure's on them. And then pressure will be on City as well, right? They got to go back top of the league. So all we can do is our job. So yeah, happy.
Love a happy
How about you?
jovial Jace. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. A lazy Sunday, then a bit of gardening, a bit of the usual nonsense. But like you, very chuffed, albeit, I don't know, it feels a bit odd when you're sometimes watching this game. Obviously, I feel still a bit deflated post Bayern Munich and crashing out of Europe. And knowing, I think that's one of the main things I wanted to mention here is just we're back at it. You know, there's 5 games to go. We're top of the league. There's still a lot to play for, and you know, credit where credit's due. We're going to get into it, of course, but to get this club, we talked about Slumpville in the last pod. We've come back from this, and we got a good result. And it wasn't a vintage display by any means or any stretch of the imagination, but we got it. If you're joining us for the first time, please do give this vid a like. Please do give the channel a subscribe. We're going to be going through an important game for Arsenal that has taken us back to the top of the league. And we're going to start, like we always do, with a Rip Roaring review. I'm going to hand over to you, Jace, because I've not even thought about mine yet. So I'm going to think about mine while you do yours.
I guess, we can come back from setbacks. We've had 2 defeats on the bounce. We talk about Slumpville. We talk about that ability to come back and that mental fortitude you talk about a lot. I think we're starting to show this. It's a different Arsenal last season. We did slump, and we got stuck in the slump. So to come and win 2-0 at Wolves, I think we've got a lot of critique to talk about in regards to the actual performance we saw. But I'm very happy to see us with a positive mental attitude going into that game and doing what we needed to do to get ourselves back at top of the league. However, there is a league title on, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more throughout the pod. But do you want it? That's the question now. Do you want it? Because we need to show that we want it sometimes. Sometimes I think we have a little bit of a lackadaisical way of playing. And I think sometimes only half the squad show up in certain games. Now, you could call that down to fatigue. But, you know, how many of these players have ever been in this position and this opportunity before is a question I have. I don't think many. Only Zinni and Gabriel have been in this position before. So, you know, now 5 games left. It doesn't matter whether you've got 0 energy in the tank or whether you've got 50% or whether you're 75. Doesn't matter. You need to give absolutely everything now. I don't want to see any lackadaisical performances. I want to see us going to pedal to the metal all the way to the end now, because there's no excuses. And if I don't see that, then put them on the transfer list because this is what we're about now, and you got to take the opportunities. But yeah, happy.
I actually like the fact that you said there is going to be some critique, because it's interesting, right? As Arsenal fans, we look at a 2-0 win away from home, going top of the league, and the first thought in my own mind, and it seems in yours, is to critique some of the things that didn't necessarily work well. And maybe that's what Arteta has both drummed into these players and us as analyzers of games or content creators, whatever you want to call it, because we look at where can we improve, where can we do better, what went wrong, what are the things we need to focus on. I think that's an incredible place to be in compared to where we've been in previous years, where we'd probably be looking to blame individual elements of our game or isolated players or whatever it might be in order to figure out why we lost, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the first thing is we're not losing. Maybe our perspective's different if we lose that game. But you can see where the improvement still needs to be made, right, to get us still to another level. Even Mikel said there's another level this team can go to, and I can see it too. I can see where that other level is, in my opinion. There's some really clear things that we need to do. And And I think that also is feedback. Mikel doesn't really care what we think, but there are things that that Mikel can do to set the team up differently. I think bring out different results as well.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you think Mikel doesn't listen to the pod is an absolutely insane assumption, Jace.
He's one of our subscribers, right?
Of course,
one of those 66.
One of the 66. So while you were talking, I was thinking, and I don't know if you caught any of the Man City Chelsea FA Cup semi-final yesterday. I caught about 60 minutes or so of it, and the one direction that I'm heading in is Man City don't look at it. They don't look fully there. And we talked a lot about the gas in the tank and being cooked for Arsenal. Man City don't necessarily look as energetic as you would think they would be. And they didn't have Haaland. I don't know if he's actually injured or if he was just rested. It seems like a weird game to rest him in if it was. But they've also got more games than us coming now. They've now got an FA Cup final after the end of the season. I know they don't have the Champions League anymore, but they've got a few more games than us because they've got their game in hand as well. And the pressure is now back on them. We could be 4 points ahead of them come Tuesday evening if we beat Chelsea at the Emirates. And so I want to give you a bit of hope, Jace. I want to give you a bit of a mechanism to look at, because although it was at one point in our hands, and I talked a little bit about shit in the bed last time when the terminology came out that it was in our hands, and now it's no longer in our hands. And we're relying upon Man City to drop points. But all we need, Jace, if we win our games, is one draw. One draw. That's all I'm asking. So it's there. It's there.
I love your positivity. I love it. But at the same time,
I want to bring you up, Jace. I don't want any of that. I don't want any ifs, buts, or maybes. I don't want it.
Here's a scenario in my head, right? Yeah. We somehow don't turn up against Chelsea. We lose 1-0, 2-1. Some stupid result, some stupid mistake, yeah? Then the next thing, we got the London derby. We're in Las Vegas next weekend on Sunday. We absolutely ruined the London derby. And then I'm sat in that pool in Las Vegas watching the Man City game because we're going to this pool party to watch the sports in the sports bar. And I'm crying into whatever alcoholic beverage I'm drinking because Man City are just storming it back to top of the league.
I don't know what you mean.
Just imagine me
play Nottingham Forest
in tears.
Nottingham Forest are going to actually ruin them. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. Obviously, Jason doesn't have the positivity. I'm trying to give him some. I wanted to.
Hey, mate.
So we're gonna go on.
On the other hand, if what you say comes true, then Vegas is going to be great.
You'll have an alcoholic drink in your hand no matter which way you carve it up. Let's be honest. I wanted to talk about something on the pod that we talked about in the last two episodes, particularly was about the second half and second half syndrome, because we ran out of gas. The tank was empty. We were absolutely horrific in both the Villa game second half and not so bad in the Bayern second half, but there was a lack of, I think you called it toothless. We didn't have any bite to us in that second half. This game was very, very different from a second half standpoint, and it felt like something maybe either had changed or we'd recognized something. Do you see anything different in the second half? What do you think about our performance generally across this game against Wolves?
So the first half was lacking energy. That's what I'll say about the first half. It was one of those first halves where I was getting increasingly frustrated with the style of football that we play with Gabby Jesus up front. I think that is one of the things when we talk about critique, right, and how we come out and play. We are now playing with a certain way when we have Gabby Jesus up front versus when we have Havertz up front. Very different style of play because Declan Rice is in a different position, Havertz in a different position. You're bringing different players into the game. And that first half performance for me was deceptive, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that, let me explain what I mean by deceptive. We had a lot of it. Sometimes it looked like some energy. It definitely looked like a lot of ball control in the game, but we didn't do anything with it. It was deceptively creative, deceptively controlling, because there was no end product. There was no threat really coming from it. And that's because we just kind of seem to pass it from side to side to side to side around that box. when all I want to do is, when you're somewhere around the edge of the box, just get a shot away, do something, like invigorate the crowd, because we weren't able to run at them. We weren't able, it was just passing side to side, and that's what I mean by like deceptive kind of creativity, deceptive control of a game. Because in theory, I guess we're controlling the game, but we're not doing anything with it. Like, we're not actually, I would say, actively creating loads of chances. And like, we had that one goal that Trossard scored, and we come on to talk about it. I mean, I wouldn't say that was a well-worked chance. I would say that was a hit and hope. And I'm glad he took it, because that's what I wanted to see, but we didn't do enough of it. We're trying to play sometimes this too perfect football. That's what I saw in the first half. It was just frustrating, and that's a little bit of my critique, right? Is the second half was a much better performance. It was much more direct in the second half, but the first half was just very, very start of the season Arsenal, before we found out how to use Havertz in the striker role. That's what it was. Every time we have Jesus up front, that is what it is. And it's not a criticism of Jesus. Jesus can add value, but I don't think it's actually anymore in the centre forward role, because we've said this so many podcasts now. If he's going to play there, he's got to score.
Yeah, I mean, it's something actually, I wrote this down while I was watching it, and it's a really good point from you there, that if he's not playing as a striker, though, that's the thing I've recognised most. There was one point during this game where he was actually right back, and he was actually recovering the ball and playing from that position. It just seemed really odd. Like, there's not many. I've seen Kane do this enough over the years, where he's not been involved in the game, so he drops deeper into the 10 role to retrieve the ball and kind of feel like he's involved in the game and help unlock some of the other players. Jesus is not doing that, because we have all the ball. It's not like we don't have the ball and he needs to help us recover that ball. I just don't think he actually knows what he's supposed to do either. That for me is, but that can't be true, because Arteta would not allow him to be coached in such a way that he doesn't understand his role within the team. So maybe I just don't understand it. But like I said, it felt very odd, like you say, when we are much more aligned, creative, dynamic, direct, with Havertz as our focal point rather than Jesus as our focal point. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we are. And maybe there is a game plan here. Maybe we're being overly critical in the last few podcasts, or I am especially being overly critical of Jesus, because we don't know what Mikel's asked him to do, how he's asked him to set up. It just, as an Arsenal fan, watching the games continuously with Jesus in that position, we're not seeing end product from him. We're not seeing goals. We're getting frustrated at certain points in the game. Now, whether our perceptions of how we should see the game is very different and wrong compared to how Mikel wants the game played, that's a big question up for debate, and I don't think we're ever going to know the answer to that. All we know is that we're more excited when Havertz is up front. We look more direct when Havertz is up front. We see more creativity, and that's what I want to watch. Like, it's so it feels so. I can't think of the word, but the point I was going to say was, it feels very hypocritical when your team is top or second in the league, winning most of the games, playing better football than anyone else in the league, to be complaining about the situation with your forward not doing enough, right? But
bear in mind, we scored the most goals in the league.
Bear in mind, but how many of those has Jesus scored?
Oh, I mean, not many. I'm not saying he has, but like, it's just, you're right. We likely are maybe being somewhat overcritical, but I think we both said this before. United has to score goals. It's as simple as that. You don't pay that money and have someone in that position, and that's their job ultimately, and he's not scoring enough. And so there's also, and I think you mentioned it, like, positionally, when Jesus is up top, it disjoints the rest of our midfield to a point where Havertz has to play the left 8. And although he plays differently in that position, I actually really enjoyed him in this left 8 position during this game. But maybe that's the opposition more than anything else. But then Rice plays a deeper sitting role as a single pivot by comparison to when he's maybe with Jorginho, and that becomes, or even with Partey, which we might get onto. So maybe there's some of that that's playing a part in it as well. It's not just Jesus in what he's doing or not doing. It's also his disruption to the rest of the system.
Yeah, I think there is a disruption to the system, and I think we can go on to talk about this a little bit in rotations and subs as well, and the lineup we put out, right? Because I think that have a different spin on it.
Yeah,
but talk to me a little bit about the second half.
I mean, like you, I definitely feel there's a lot more energy, a lot more speed into our play. It kind of 10 minutes into the second half is when we started to kind of really feel like we've always had that control. That is what we do with every game that we've been playing. We're all about suffocation, control. But that's the kind of time where I kind of felt that we started to play with our tails up a little bit and started to move the ball a bit quicker. And I think you mentioned just a second ago, maybe some of the changes in the team, the substitutes, and that kind of maybe made us play a bit better. Like Odegaard and Rice in the last 15 minutes of the game in particular, it felt much more Arsenal that we'd like to see. And I don't know whether or not, like I said, I've been quite critical of Thomas Partey when he has come on, because he felt like the game maybe was passing him by at times. But maybe him going in, and maybe this could have been the same said for Jorginho, it did kind of allow some of those forward players to play higher up the pitch and thus be able to be more creative and overload in the midfield and kind of get more, because we played less of that side-to-side football that you mentioned, where it's deceptive. We have control of the game, but we're not being very, very swashbuckling in terms of our goal scoring or taking shots. I want to talk about that a bit later, but like, just that those changes in particular for me felt like we had a better second half. And maybe I wanted to hark back to an old Arsenal adage, which was the handbrake was off. That's what kind of felt a little bit in the second half. It's like we'd recognised through the first half the way that Wolves play. And there were times when I was worried about Wolves, because when they did get forward, there were some opportunities for them. And we'll get onto a player that I felt kept us in the game somewhat. But it wasn't like they were unthreatening, and thus, I think maybe we saw something in the first half that we thought we could exploit a bit more in the second, and maybe we did. There was certainly some tactical difference from our setup that meant that we were just a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, but you'd expect that, right, with the caliber of player we have versus Wolves. So you're saying
they were ravaged with injury as well, though, right? I think that is one thing that I look at this game and kind of think 2-0 is not good enough. I know that sounds silly, 2-0 away from home. And actually, I saw an image, and this we've not maybe talked about this, but this is a Wolves team, I think, that I think they beat Man City earlier on in the season. I'm sure they either beat or drew with Liverpool. They've had some really good results against the big clubs, and everyone was, it's just Wolves. We just beat them away from home 2-0 with 5 games to go. So, I mean, I don't want to, bypass that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bit to talk about this subject a little bit later, but every team, every game in the Premier League is a hard game. You shouldn't ever really, with the level of quality, because of the level of money that's in the league, take any team for granted. So you're saying that you would have started Thomas Partey then?
I don't know. There's obviously something that Arteta does not fully trust with Partey at this juncture. I think that much is clear, because he's not starting and he's not getting a lot of minutes. There was, in a lot of games that we've had recently, we could have made that change significantly earlier than we did. So I'm not sure. I think the lineup, like I said, I still think Jorginho and Rice is probably our best midfield pairing. As is, I don't think Havertz as the left eight, like I say, was okay today, and I do really like him. One thing I would say is, for someone that we've talked about previously that is quite lackadaisical in his movement and quite lethargic in the way that it looks like he's running through treacle sometimes, he gets up and down that pitch like nobody's business. I would love to see the running stats, because him and Odegaard, I would argue, would probably cover the most distance. And he does seem he recovers the ball really, really well. So I do think that, but I don't think Partey should start yet, but I do feel he's a useful and versatile tool in our Swiss Army knife, per se, that we can use at certain times. And maybe we just haven't become, because I did want to talk about, I talked a lot about game management in the last pod, and there's still an element of that I'd like to talk about as well in this game, which we'll get on to. I want to talk about Trossard's goal, because that's what really transformed the game for us. So the segment is called Tross Is Boss. Tell me, Jace, do you feel this was an unreal finish, a totally meant finish, or do you feel there was an element of luck to go along with this Trossard goal?
Swing and hope, my friend. Swing and hope. And luckily for him, it looked, if you hadn't seen how he kicked the ball, you just said, oh, that's a brilliant goal. What a stunner. But unfortunately, you saw how he struck the ball, and it was just by chance that it managed to nestle in the top corner in a way that the keeper could get nowhere near it. As I say, I wouldn't say that it came as a surprise in the first half, but I wasn't expecting it either, if that makes sense. Like, we had the domination of the ball, but we weren't creating chances, and then this chance kind of just came out the blue. And I was expecting and just wanting someone to on the outside of the box, like a Declan or an Odegaard, when the ball drops, to hit it. I wasn't expecting it to be just inside the box and Trossard hitting it the way he did, but I'll take it. It was, the way it hit the net was beautiful. The way it was struck, maybe not quite so. But yeah, I know. I take it, and I think it gave us a little bit of breathing room that we needed, right? To have all of that ball domination in the first half and to not take advantage would have been a shame. So yeah, I'm happy that we got the goal, even though you could argue it wasn't our best football.
But do you want to, because we've been really constructively criticising Trossard for his starting berth in the Arsenal squad over the course of this season. He obviously got the nod this time and did reward us with a goal. Do you feel that he was the right selection down that left hand side?
No, there's nothing against Trossard. It's just that we need to play Martinelli into form, and Wolves is a game. I think you saw from how he played in the second half, right? I'd have started him, bring that energy, get him back on form, get his minutes up after he's had that injury where he's been having bit parts. Unless they're nursing him with an injury to the end of the season, just trying to keep him going, and they're being very careful, which might be one of the reasons why we're not seeing him start or play whole games. So I don't know. We don't know about that. We've not heard anything about that. So I guess we have to assume he could start if needed and play a full game if needed. In which case, I would have, because he's our starting left winger most of the time. We need to bring him back into form with 5 games to go to the end of the season. It's not like you're playing a Tottenham away or a United away. You're playing Wolves away. So he's gonna terrorise defenders to start him. That's no disrespect to Trossard. It's just that we need Martinelli in form. And the only way to play a player into form is to give him minutes.
I mean, it's a good point. I don't necessarily know if I agree with it. And the only reason I say that, you look at the output, and Trossard's got 16 goal and assist across this season in less minutes than Martinelli's got less of the same.
Yeah.
We've been quite critical, and maybe I just don't feel that we're being critical enough of Martinelli. Like you're right, definitely right that he's certainly gone off the boil. And some of that can be down to an injury, but some of his injuries, they're not like muscular, they're not like breakages, they're not anything like that. Some of it, he had a cut when he was out for a while back just recently. I just kind of like, I don't understand where his output's gone. He was an absolute monster last season, and we have not seen that same Martinelli this season. And I don't know whether or not competition will breed a better player. Like you say, I do kind of understand your point where you can play him into form. 5 games to go for the rest of the season. Is that the time that I need to play him into form? Is the question I'm asking.
Well, ideally it wouldn't be. Ideally he'd already be hitting peak form right now, but he's not. So yes, Trossard has been consistent all year, and I think that's one good thing about him. But we know that he doesn't particularly, if he starts, we don't see his best performances. I wouldn't say we had his best performance yesterday either. He had that swing, what I'd call a swing in hope. It went in, great for him, great for us. But I want to see more energy on that left side. And I don't think Trossard can kind of bring it in the same way Martinelli can. I also think when we talk about game management, or maybe tactical management, Saka and Trossard in a way can play quite similar games with they cut inside in each wing, and I think we need one or the other, if that makes sense. Salah cuts in, but you have Lucas Diaz who can run to the byline. Lucas Diaz? That's wrong. Is it Lucas Diaz?
Luis Diaz.
Luis Diaz. Yeah, there you go. I knew. I just didn't think. I'm not a Liverpool fan. I don't care. But the point is they have two different types of wingers. I think with Martinelli and Saka, we have two different types of wingers. I think Trossard and Saka are quite similar. And I think I said this before. So I kind of want to see that slight tactical difference in the game. And I guess that, if Martinelli isn't ready to play, then Trossard plays, and we don't have an option to play that tactical difference. But I think it just changes part of our play.
Nice. All right. Want to move on to a section that I've called Kill or Be Killed, because I was watching this game, and from my perspective, I think you mentioned it maybe earlier, it could have flipped on a dime, this game, because we could have easily lost this game as much as we had won it. And there was an element also here that we're quite afraid or shy to kill off games when we probably have the nous and ability to do so. We have done it earlier in the season. We've definitely won games with 4, 5, and 6, etc. And those are the type of games where we have enabled us to get that big goal difference. But was there something missing in this game? Was there a potential for us to be killed in this game, do you think, Jace, or something else that you're saying that I didn't?
I had to think about this quite long and hard about what I was going to say here, this part of the show. Because I think what I say you would say, based off of what we saw in like Sheffield United and the Luton game, and who else did we beat in that period? West Ham, was that you would argue what I'm about to say is maybe a bit contradictory. But we're not killers. We're not. Wolves were a team with countless injuries, schoolboys on the bench. They were not giving us too much of a threat. They weren't absent, but they weren't also at the same time our defence had control of it. And we decided to leave that game vulnerable well into the last 10 minutes of that game. We were vulnerable, right? Until Odegaard got that second, which I want to talk about as well, because that's a sublime finish. We were not killing that game. Man City, for a second half performance, if they were only 1-0 up, they would show no mercy. And that's the difference. I've talked about that word before as well, right? No mercy. That's the difference between champions, in my opinion. And I just feel like when we beat West Ham 6-0, when we beat Sheffield United, when we had those big high-scoring games, the pressure wasn't on like the pressure's on now. It's a different time. It's 2 months ago. Now we're really at the pressure point. So getting as I said, I don't want to be too critical, because, as we said, we got the result we needed. We showed we could come back from a setback. However, I don't think we're killers in the way that we'd see someone like Man City finish that game off.
Yeah, I mean, to a point in that game at like 90 minutes, I'm sure, like most Arsenal fans, a sense of nerves is creeping in, because that is a slender lead that can quite easily, in Arsenal of yonder, would have fallen behind in. We could have been susceptible for a counter-attacking goal while trying to find that second, and could have cost us quite dearly, to be honest. Obviously, like I said, this is quite a game of yin and yang somewhat, that we could have easily lost it as much as we did win it. And I totally agree with you that we're probably not killers. But it wasn't like there wasn't opportunity for us to do so. I would feel that I've seen a lot of talk online of like Saka, because he dribbled past one player and like, Saka's back. That shot he had was awful. It was awful. He made it, granted, but it was awful. And it was the only dribble that he had during the game. I can't remember who was playing their left back, but I can't imagine it's their starting left back. And it doesn't, Saka, for example, just doesn't seem to like the same player in going at his man and wanting to beat them. And I did feel that they were there for the taking, somewhat down both sides, to be honest. And that only really transformed when we started to put a few more players forward. So this is 50-50 for me, because there was an element here that we could have been killed in this game. And we're fortunate here to be talking about a bit of rub of the green, a bit of luck here, a bit of wind in our sails, maybe some of that element of wanting to come back after 2 defeats. All of that and a bit of luck on our side got us the win today. We could have easily been here talking about a 1-1 draw that has effectively killed off our Premier League chances.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about Raya, right? He he kept us in it in a few points. And then, we squandered opportunities in the second half. We just didn't capitalise. We talked about clinicalness as well before, right? So when it feels like we're not learning our lessons in certain times, which is, again, very hypocritical to say, considering the high goal scoring games that we had back in the kind of February, March time. But it's a different period of the season now, and it needs a different stance, and we need more. We need more.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly we weren't taking our chances. There did feel again a bit of lack of spark, a bit of lack of creativity, some of that sauce that teams get, and a bit of aura that teams get that we were lacking in this game particularly. And I would say that it's kind of like pissing in a urinal, bit of shyness. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like we were just really shy and really fearful in front of goal. That we just I know a lot of people will say, go and just shoot. You're in a position. Like, why are we continually trying to walk it into the goal? We had about 3 shots like that in the first half, and all of them were shit. I think Odegaard had one, Saka had one. I think Martinelli. I can't remember if it was Martinelli. Jesus was the one, but they were like really, really weak, direct at the keeper, really poor shots. And so even when we are trying to take our chances, they're not very good. I think there was only one where I looked at. I think it was Havertz on the half turn. There was one where he kind of span, the ball was in the air. He actually hit it quite cleanly. And
the one in the first 60 seconds, that one.
No, it was quite far into the game. But there was one that was directly down the keeper's throat. Anywhere else, left or right of him, that's going in. It was a really quick reflex. There was one right at the start. I do remember that one. But like I say, most of our shots were incredibly weak, incredibly poor, either right at the keeper, wide, or just no power whatsoever behind them. And I just feel like it's so weird to be sat here talking about a team that are top of the league with the most goals and being hypercritical about the chances that we're not taking. That's the world that we live in. It's funny.
So I guess as I said, we knew we were going to critique the performance, and it probably sounds, as I say, very hypocritical to listen if you're listening into this, to hear the fact that we are. But at the end of the day, we got the results, so we can move on, I guess, and we'll.
I think it's a fine balance. I like the critical balance. Let's move backwards down the other side of the pitch then, because you mentioned it briefly there, and I wanted to touch upon it here. David Raya, for me, as part of that defensive unit, really did keep us in this game. I actually feel that we would have lost this game without him. And one of the biggest things I looked at after, so we're currently 1 clean sheet away from him getting the Golden Glove. He's 4 ahead of anybody else in the league. He didn't play all of our games for us. Remember, Ramsdale played some of the games at the start before he was transferred in his debut season for Arsenal. There's some really incredible numbers for the Arsenal keeper, and we've still got 5 games left to play to kind of get that clean sheet and get the glove for him, which is pretty much going to be going his way. And the one thing I would say, there was a save he made where he pushed the shot onto the crossbar. Most keepers aren't saving that. That's going in. And his ability, we talked a lot about his distribution and all that kind of good stuff. But his ability to claim the ball in his penalty area, for someone who looks quite short, I think he comes across as short. He probably isn't. I'm sure we've talked about this before, but he looks like that he doesn't command the box. He looks short, I know, but it's I don't think he is. I'm sure he's like 6 foot or 5'11". But he just claimed everything. And I think, it's really good to have someone so self-assured, so confident, so aware, because we've been here before talking a lot about Ramsdale and the nervousness and the inability to exude confidence, and that percolates through the rest of the defensive unit when you've got someone behind you that you can trust and that and that can command, that can distribute, that can save. All of those things really did solidify us. Like I said, we've had a lot of defensive control over games, and it's maybe some of our forward play that we've not necessarily been looking forward to. I feel that he was really part of a critical defense that we did really well in this game, and it was the best form of attack, as this segment is called. Anybody that you want to talk about in that defensive kind of setup, in that that front to that 6, the number 1 to the number 6, that you think worked out well for us?
I'd just call out always a bit of praise for Gabriel. He was just. You mentioned that we talked about being vulnerable, because if it's only 1-0, you're always vulnerable. It's a fact. It doesn't matter how good you are, you're always vulnerable. You know, as you say, the game can turn. But Gabriel does make that concern, that worry, that anxiety, even when he gets to crunch time towards the end of the game. I don't worry like I used to worry. He's calm, he's controlled. There was one point in the second half when we were a little bit on edge, and he was able just to shield that ball out and stop the Wolves attack, and he just shielded it out of play. He did turn around and absolutely bollock Martinelli off the back of it. I don't know if you remember. Yeah. But he has got that defense under control. Him and Saliba exceptionally well. Even Ben White. I think the three of those particular are all very clued in. Obviously, the left back changing a lot probably doesn't help too much. But with Raya, there's a real defensive core there. And Gabriel yesterday, again, standout performance from the defence. Doesn't get enough credit in central centre-backs go in the Premier League, in my opinion. And I mean, he's the standout player from the defence yesterday for me.
I wanted to also, I had a note ready to go at half-time. I think I even tweeted it. Like, I suspected Kyrgios was going to get hooked in the same way that he got hooked against Bayern. Is that right?
Yeah.
Bayern.
Yeah.
Because he felt lost in that first half. He'd lost a lot in the air. He was caught underneath it. He made a few mistakes in passing. He was maybe too committed going forward and wasn't able to recover. And I was worried, and I felt this game was crying out for Zinchenko. I don't know if you saw or felt the same.
Yeah, well, this is interesting, right? I think there are certain games when Kvyat has been really good and composed. I think games when you need more of a classic centre-back at the back, he's perfect for it. Today, however, you could argue this was a game for Zinni. You wanted Rice further up the pitch, and you wanted Havertz maybe a bit further up the pitch. And so to have Zinni to step into that position occasionally, alongside a Jorginho or a Partey, would have been much better. And I think it would have been a perfect game for Zinni. You know, we talk about when's good to use him, when's not. This was the game to use him. Simple as that.
I literally wrote the same thing. But then I'm credits where credit's due. Whatever changes he'd made or kind of looked himself in the mirror in the dressing room at half time, Kvyat came out a different player. He grew with the game. He was much more involved. He was much more self-assured, much more confident on the ball. Was even able to get kind of down that left-hand wing, which you don't see very often because, like you say, he's probably more of a centre-back by trade and was more safe. But yeah, I would say that he grew with the game and was actually, by the end of it, I was happy to be wrong, because there could have been an element there that you bring on Zinchenko. And we know Zinchenko does have mistakes in him that could have maybe cost us something in that game, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. But hey, they didn't. So
anyway, I know I've not got a segment for this, but I did want to kind of briefly talk about just game management. Because we did talk about this on the last pod, and I saw a picture in the Sky coverage that had the minutes played by the players in the top 3 clubs, and out of those top 10, Arsenal have 6, Man City have 3, and Liverpool only actually have 1. And we've lambasted Arteta for maybe a lack of rotation. There's 2 sides to this coin, right, Jason? My question is going to be to you. I wonder where you sit on this fence or directly on it, I imagine. With 5 games to go, and so rotation at this part of the season is probably going to come very seldom because you got 5 games to go and we need to win the league. Yeah. But we are running players into the ground. You can see it out there. There's some tired legs. Do you think that Arteta it needs to brunt and take some of the responsibility and blame for our lack of kind of game management and rotation in this squad? Or do you kind of agree with his view, which was very much like players can play 3 times a week, no problem?
I don't agree that players can play 3 times a week. I think it does take its toll. It does take fatigue. Unless they're not training at all, which is probably the case at this time of season, to be honest with you. I don't think the 3 times a week thing is... I think it's there to protect an element in the media, but I think it's very hard. I think you do run players into the ground. It's a difficult one, right? Because we have to maybe look broader than just Mikel Arteta here. And when I say that, I'm talking about Edu. I'm talking about Richard. Is it Richard Garlick? The guy is responsible for the ins and outs. Because there are just players on our bench that should be out by now, and there should be other players that are in that we trust more. Now, don't get me wrong, our club overall, with regards to bringing in quality, is doing a brilliant job compared to some of the dross that we've brought in over the last few years before Arteta. We're doing a brilliant
Tross, right?
Tross. Yeah, Tross was good. Tross was good. But no, we are doing a really good job there. But we still need to go a ways towards improving when it comes to selling. And I think if you sell more, then you can bring more in. And I think that element is impacting our squad management at this point in the season. It wasn't at the beginning of the season so much. It is now. Because now you're seeing really who Mikel trusts and doesn't trust. So if there are players right now sitting on our bench not being trusted, they're wasting politely. It's going to sound disrespectful, but they are wasting space on the bench. We need players in who are able and trusted to come on and either start games or take minutes out of keep other starting players during a league title running.
Well, I looked at
look at
City.
Sorry, yeah, exactly. That was going to be my point. That was going to be my exact point.
Well, I looked yesterday when they did the FA Cup semi, and Haaland didn't play; he wasn't on the bench, but they played Alvarez. Alvarez he's not Haaland, but when we're dropping, let's say Jesus or Havertz, and we're dropping one of them, and then Eddie and Nketiah comes in, like the drop off is immense. It's far too big of a delta or a gap, and that's just one position. We do that, like I said. I think we talked about their centre backs. They lose a John Stones, they're replacing it with Gaviol, who's like 75 million and scoring goals for fun. Like, I don't know who would we even replace Saliba or Gabriel with at this point in time? It would disjoint our entire back four to do
it would. I think obviously Timber coming back, the defense isn't where this, for me, this critique it doesn't lie in the defense. If Timber's fit, you got Timber, Tomiyasu, Zinni, Kivior, Gabriel, Saliba, Ben White. It's depth at the back. I'm not worried about the back. Yeah, okay, you could say there are starting players that are stronger than some of those on the bench, but it's still a decent level of quality. There are 4 players for me that stand out on our bench that I just feel at the moment I'll wait politely, and I say this in the kindest terms, they're good players, but they're wasting space if Mikel does not trust them. And that's the question. Does he trust them? Because if you asked him in the media, he's obviously going to say yes. He does. He always defends the squad. But the reality is he's not bringing them on. They're not getting minutes. They're not starting when we need to rest an Odegaard or a Saka. So you're never seeing Fabio Vieira. What's happened to him? Reece Nelson, he'll come on against a Sheffield United when we're already 3 or 4-0 up. Smith Rowe, Eddie Nketiah.
We've talked about trust before, though, right? And I ultimately feel that's what it boils down to. Arteta cannot trust these players in those moments.
Yeah, but we need players that we can trust. You look at Grealish, Foden, Doku, Bernardo Silva, like all of these players are interchangeable. And then you got Alvarez, Haaland, then you got De Bruyne as well. Like when you look at all of that City attack, they're all interchangeable. Yeah, okay, De Bruyne is the one they miss more than anyone. But apart from that, they are all interchangeable in that kind of front line.
Yeah.
We're not... the only one we're doing is Trossard for Martinelli. That is it. And Gabriel Jesus, who's not playing well anyway, I would almost include him and take that 4 to a 5. It's just that Mikel seems to trust him. But I don't think he's performing as well as we would expect. So they're politely, I keep saying this word because it's probably not sounding polite at all anymore. They need to go. There's big 4 sale signs up over some of these players' heads. And I want to see who we're bringing in the summer. We need a winger desperately. We need a striker desperately. We arguably need an Odegaard backup desperately if it's not going to be Fabio Vieira. And that's what will stop us winning the league.
Yeah, I mean, but rebuilds take a long time, and not every player is going to be good. right? We have had like Fabio is an Arteta player, and I will hark back to Grealish. Although he's not getting the minutes, there was an element of him taking a long time to fit within the Guardiola system, and now is the same for Foden. Look at his output this season. It's just really crazy to look back at some players like Cole Palmer. I hate Chelsea, obviously, but he's had an absolutely unbelievable return at Chelsea. Moussa Diaby at Villa was available for 35 million and could have easily been a backfill for Saka. We look at some of the talk at the moment of maybe like an Eze or Elise at Palace.
I'd have them too.
I mean, years about that was Zaha, right? And I would have also taken him.
I'd have had him too.
So it's just, it's not like there isn't talent out there for us to get, but there's also an element like Diaby at 35 million is now probably going to cost you 80, 90 in the same league just because of where you are in the Premier League. To find those players, and maybe some of our gambles just haven't paid off as maybe, we're going to be looking at Zubamendi, or we're going to be looking at Gyökeres, or I don't know how to pronounce it, but like that's, we're going to be looking at those as more punts, and they might not work out.
Maybe, but but it's like you could say the same about Darwin Núñez as well, right? With Liverpool. The thing for me, right, is your point on a rebuild. I get it, but here's the thing: how many chances, how many lives do we have? So last year, first time in that position. All right, fine, we get it. 1 life gone. This year, strike 2. If we don't win it, strike 2. This transfer window in the summer has to be the last. Then there's no excuses, because it's not like even before last year when we had our first chance of being in the fight with City. We'd already been doing the rebuild 2 seasons before that with Mikel, right? So that's rebuild had started, and
these are his players.
We were,
right?
Exactly. We were ahead of schedule last year. This year, we might, in his mind, still be a bit ahead of schedule, and it's the first year back in the Champions League. So the effort on that squad is required is much larger and much more intensive. So I get that too. But if we have this same conversation, let's remember this. So this is 21st of April. This time next year in April, let's have this conversation and see where we're at. Because if we're in the same position, I'm probably going more to Edu and Richard Garlick and going, what the hell? It's not like Mikel's obviously a great coach. I'm behind Mikel, but we can't be in this position again when we have players that he doesn't trust. He needs to give him the players that he wants.
Oh, spicy. Jace.
Yeah, spicy.
All right. I wanted to, in the parking lot, there's only one thing I just wanted to mention that we didn't get to talk about for me, which was the challenge on Havertz. Kilman lunged at him 1.5 feet off the floor. And then eventually, like Declan Rice caught up and got a yellow in the follow-up because we had advantage. We didn't do anything with it. They had the ball. Rice tried to recover it. I just get it's once again, I know we talked about it a lot this season, the inconsistency in refereeing is just quite shambolic in my opinion. It's like there are times when VAR takes far too long splitting hairs over an offside where someone's kneecap is somewhat like a small amount forward, and yet you've got lunges like this which could break a player's leg. This was like Eduardo levels of like potential injury.
Ooh.
And we don't. It just baffles me, and I don't get it. And this is a game that I know we've talked about this already. This is a game that could have shaped our season, and ultimately, it's going to be one that we're just going to move on from and forget about probably now. But it could have been very different.
You got a bit of beef with this one, then. So you think that should have been I'm assuming you think that should have been a much harsher punishment.
It's a straight red. There's no doubt about it in my mind. Like it's just a risky challenge. In real time, it looks bad. Slow down, it looks bad. Like it's some of those ones where you look at all that looks bad in real time, and then you slow it down. You're like, actually, he hasn't caught anyone, and someone jumped over them, and they just landed poorly. And I just, as a couch watching fan, you don't get to see the element of VAR. You don't get to hear it. You don't get to see it. It's the same in the ground. To be honest, we've been there plenty of times where you're like, what's happening here? Then we don't know. And that for me is just a bit that's like, if you want to give transparency, if you want to give VAR a seat at the table, then lean into it. Take advantage of the same things that rugby and other sports do, where you can hear, where you can engage, where you can be part of it. Don't feel like you're being shrouded in some form of mystery or some other kind of things that are happening to make you feel as though it's being underhanded. I don't even think they even looked at it, is the question I'm asking here. And it's just like, I thought, well, you was talking about this. It's like, do you get challenges? You might get 3 challenges per game. And once you've used them, you've used them. And you can basically throw in and kind of say, I'm challenging that one. I want it looked at. I know that football is a very fluid and fast game. And it's not like NFL or anything else, or other games that type of system is in place. But I still believe there's an element where, the amount of money, the amount of pressure, the amount of things on the line and at stake in the Premier League, it is higher than any other sport in the world right now. And it needs the same custodianship and looking after as those other sports have.
Yeah, no, I agree. FA, if you're listening, Robert O'Greville is available for contact on consultation.
Yeah,
for trialing new systems in place.
Give me my money. That's all I want, Dave. Jace, just a big payday. That's all it is.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Then I'll be just as poor as every other referee. I'll take any bribes, anything you want. I'm there for the taking. Send me the referee in Dubai like Michael Oliver, and I'll be good.
Do you know what? I'd quite like to ref in the VAR lounge. I mean, sounds like they get Domino's at half time and be quite fun.
Well, I hope they ordered it before the game, because that's how you get it for half time.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Anything for the parking lot, Jace?
Chelsea midweek game. I thought they put in a decent performance against City. I'm a little worried about that one. I'm not as worried about United and Spurs away as I am worried about Chelsea at home, because I think under Pochettino, and we saw from that game at the Bridge earlier this season, they can be a bit of a bogey team for us in the moment. Like, seems like we always win against them, but I don't know. I don't feel not feeling good about that one.
I feel more. I definitely think the Spurs game is the one that we for us to worry about, because that game, regardless of form, regardless of anything else, that game is its own microcosm of football, and everything around it you throw out the window for that one game. I do feel that Chelsea are a dumpster fire. Cole Palmer is the only thing that's worthwhile in that team currently. Let's be honest. It's like they are just a shit show, and if we can restrict Cole Palmer, then I think we'll be fine.
I'm gonna get this in quotes and then replay this on the TikTok, and then put a following video after the Chelsea game, just to see, just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, I'm all about the positivity and the hope right now, Jace, because it's the only thing that's getting me through the fact that we threw it away against Aston Villa. I'm here, I just love for us to get it to the last game of the season. That's all I'm saying. I think that'll be fun. It'll be exciting. That'll be worthwhile. That'll be something to give us. And this could all be over by 2 weeks today, right? We could easily be looking at it being out of our hands potentially at that point in time. So let's wait and see. But I'm not as worried about this game as I am again. Man United and Spurs away. Those two for me, they're the ones.
So Spurs away following, a week today, Sunday, playing on Tuesday against Chelsea. What rotation? Rotation or no rotation?
I don't think so. Like I say, I think with 5 games to go, you've got to go hell for leather. I think you put it quite astutely and perfectly that I don't want to see any tiredness in the legs. I want you to be going at this as though it's a cup final. We've got 5 of them to end on, so I can't see any rotation. Although I do feel that this game, Chelsea in particular, Havertz and Jorginho, so Jorginho coming into left 8 and Havertz going up top against the old Chelsea boys is going to ignite a bit of a fire underneath them. I feel that that's probably the only change I would likely make. So Jesus will drop out and Jorginho coming in.
I'd quite like that, actually. I think they could stick it to Chelsea, especially after all the abuse those fans gave them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I would do. But let's wait and see.
Yeah, fair enough. Nice. A score prediction?
2-1 Arsenal.
Nicely done. Do I even need to say?
No, you don't. 3-1.
3-1 Arsenal.
Although I'm going to say 2-0 actually, because I don't think we'll concede. I think we've got it on lock. So.
Yeah, we do, but I'm still going 3-1.
All right, fair. Thank you to everyone who's listening for joining us. I didn't even realise this on the last episode, and I forgot to say it, so I'm going to say it here. This was our 51st podcast of the season, which is quite good numbers.
wow.
I'm quite happy with that, Jace. It's over 50. We're over a half a century. So round of applause to you and to me for sticking out as long as we have. And for anybody else that is joining us on this ride, we do appreciate you watching and viewing our content. We would much also appreciate any likes or subscribes that you could give, any commentary you can add to the videos. That would really help us grow this channel and this community. We would hopefully be able to answer any questions or any commentary that you may have in any of the comments section. And you can also catch us on your podcast provider of choice. And Jace, if they're there on their podcast provider of choice, what do we ask that audience to do?
Make sure you subscribe to follow us on your podcast provider. Please leave us a review with a lovely star rating of 5, if possible, if you believe that's what we deserve. And if you do that, then all the latest episodes will be in your feed when we launch them straight away, so you'll never miss an episode of listening to our dulcet tones.
Lovely stuff. And we will see you again. Well, I don't know, actually, because me and Jace, as we probably mentioned, we're going to Vegas next week. We might be able to review the Chelsea game Tuesday evening or Wednesday before we go away, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely I can do the Chelsea. I mean,
well,
I said we should
is currently beyond me at the moment.
try and find a podcast studio in Vegas. There's loads of them.
Yeah, I just don't know if I want to talk about it, Jace. That's the problem. Me and Jace are going to be having to get up at 5:30 in the morning to catch that game. So yeah, not quite bushy-eyed and bushy-tailed and all that kind of stuff, but we'll be there, ready and waiting.
Try our best.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in the week.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
Come on, you